Old man doing a podcast. Real weirdos. We have English degrees. Real weirdos. We talk about movies for way too goddamn long.
God, I hate my fucking job so much already.
Tired of stocking lettuce?
I wish I was stocking lettuce, honestly.
You always go with stocking lettuce.
I don't know. I find it funny.
You're just like stocking
Seriously.
lettuce is like, and you're the hot dog man, so that's why that's all like kind of off brand for you.
Yeah, but I don't like. I would be stocking hot dogs, but no, I don't know.
So what do you hate so much about it?
I feel like it's beneath me. I hate to say sound so like pretentious and like sound so aristocratic, but I did this already.
Well, dude, we just graduated from Berkeley.
I was
So.
You're fresh off that Berkeley degree, dude. That's why you're feeling that. Let that degree stagnate and fall away like everyone else's, and then you'll be like, oh, okay, and then you'll be like with the rest of us.
Oh no,
you know?
No, dude, you can do shit out there with an English degree. There's a lot of shit to do.
No, but I did just get my diploma sent to me, PDF style. I don't know if you got yours as well, Jesse.
No, I've been waiting for fucking ages now. It's been like 4 months.
So wait, you have to go then like to Staples and buy your own card stock and like print it on your own card stock and everything?
Yeah, congratulations. You graduated Berkeley. We're not even going to give you a piece of paper. You got to print it yourself.
Yeah.
Please, for the love of God, I know you guys are like proud of your degrees, but please print them on like just like A4 computer paper.
That would be awesome with like low ink, like a low ink printer, like a weird blue tinge.
Oh my God!
Just walk into places with that. Like, I want a job.
Exactly. It has like the print test code still on it, on like the border of it.
Oh my God! It looks exactly like you were just like Googled like degree.
Yeah.
Like, I swear it's mine. I'm a total professional. Graduated from this prestigious institution not long ago. Ready for the workforce.
Yeah.
Well, like, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? It's a thing.
I want to do anything right now to like make money. I hate even this next phrase I'm going to use, but build my resume. Just have like a year's worth of experience of doing something that's relevant to copywriting, editing, any type of writing, proofreading, even technical writing.
Copywriting, yeah, you could find a copywriting job pretty quickly.
Yeah, so something like that is like entry level for like a year and then apply to a better position. It's really hard because on a resume or like a cover letter or anything, you don't really talk about age. And you can be like seen maybe as like, oh, you recently graduated college. You must be like 21, 22 years old. So
right, but in reality,
it's like they're like, we
30s.
want you to learn more life skills before you apply to us, right? And it's like, I wish I could just put like a big disclaimer on my applications and just be like, I am 30.
Just put your age in like underline and bold,
Yeah,
like
exactly.
red. Just really call attention to it.
Yeah, it's an interesting place to be in for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, much like
That's right. Get it done.
Segue.
Get it done.
Segue.
Do the segue.
No,
Yeah,
I don't want
do
to
it.
anymore. I feel like a child who's been like put on the spot. I
feel like a prince that's been thrown out to the desert.
I tried earlier and it didn't work.
There you go. A prince thrown out to the desert. Alex got it done.
Okay, well, I was talking over it. Well, whatever.
That's right. Well, I can edit it. That's cool.
I fucking love this podcast so much.
Yeah, we're total pros at everything we do.
God.
Our intros, our outros, our music is a high quality.
We should just go full
done.
robotic.
It's definitely not just me writing something in like 15 minutes, throwing it out there.
Oh my God, this is definitely the first take of this intro.
We should start every podcast like this. Or like a robot, I mean.
Oh my God. Yeah, we should just like pre-record like all of our parts and like they're just not even like talking about it. They're just generic responses to each other. And we just play that at the beginning and see what happens.
Dune.
Just have random,
David
random
Lynch.
things we would say, like Jeff complaining about Star Trek, Alex, I don't know, what does Alex do? Talk about Jeopardy, and then there's me like complaining about Adam Sandler, or like some quotes about the audience didn't love it, and that makes sense, like some douchey line.
Just like play them like all together. Well, it would be just like the editing of Dune.
Yeah,
I mean, the editing of Dune,
just as confusing as the editing of this fucking
movie.
movie.
Yeah. So today we watched the 1984 film Dune. We're getting ready for the Denis Villeneuve reboot. We're excited about that because we like him as a filmmaker. And so we decided to go back to this one because why not? I hadn't seen it in like 20 years. I barely remembered it. My thoughts on it, I'll get to in a minute, but I'm going to go to you guys first. Alex, what'd you feel about the 1984 David Lynch Dune?
I love and hate this movie so much.
Which is higher?
Hate for sure.
Oh, that makes me sad.
I mean, come on. This movie is just fucking hot trash.
Oh, I can't wait to disagree.
It's like if you had diamonds and you just smeared it around a big pile of dog shit. And I'm not affixing blame to David Lynch, but there are beautiful parts of this movie, and there are amazing concepts at work here. I'm talking totally out of context, too, of the novels and the story, the written story.
Have you read it?
No, I have not.
So Jeff's read the novels, and I'm getting the sense that he really likes the film. So we'll wait to jump over to you, Jeff.
Sure.
Because I think I hated this movie.
Yeah.
I didn't. I had very little love. Things that I loved. I loved the production in almost every way. Like, I loved the visuals. I loved how goofy things were. And even the things that weren't goofy, the things that were just so 80s sci-fi movie and really high budget for the time. Like, if you adjusted for inflation, it would be like 120 million or something like that.
Wow.
I can't remember off the top of my head what the original was, but that's the adjusted budget, essentially.
42 mil.
Yeah, so all these lovely miniatures and matte paintings and cool, like, fun old sci-fi effects. I love that stuff, but the story was so completely uninteresting to me. And it felt like a movie that was from a book, right? Definitely. It felt like, okay, these would be like, there's so many names of things, like so many references to lore that you get no context on in the film. So I was pretty lost and uninterested. And it felt like a movie that was cut down, which it was. David Lynch's original cut was like 4 hours or something, but they cut it in half essentially in order to be as cynical as possible and have as many theater showings a day as possible. So that's a thing.
Good old studios.
But yeah, by the time it was halfway over, I felt like it had gone on for eternity. I was no longer interested in anything, and I just wanted it to end. And the second half was like a slog. I had to pause, and I did some editing on one of our other episodes just to like wake myself up.
Yeah, definitely. For sure.
So Jeff, how'd you feel about Dune?
Well, all right. So I think I actually hate this movie probably more than both of you.
Oh, I thought you loved it.
I do. And that's why I hate it more. Because I'm obviously a big fan of the books. And I'm not going to sit here for this episode and sit here and go like, oh, well, this is what they did wrong with the books.
Right.
This movie
Don't do the Lord of the Rings thing.
You can't. And I don't like doing it in the first place. And you can't with this movie because this movie sits in a universe of its own interpretation of things. You can gripe about like, oh, they didn't do this, but they're very limited to the miniatures at the time and like the art that was available. And Herbert's world and universe is so dynamic and beautiful and unique, and it's so hard. It's such a challenge and a gauntlet to try to capture that universe into a movie like this.
Let me ask you something. The story that's presented in this film, is that one book in the series?
It's 1.5. They try to do Dune and a bit of Dune Messiah.
Okay.
And it just doesn't work. Like that very first scene,
it's so accelerated.
Yeah, when
it's
that very
so
first
accelerated.
scene. Yeah, no, yeah. Okay, so I have so much to say, but like that first scene when you see the big baby in the tank, essentially the navigator.
Oh, I forgot about that thing. I was like, what is that? And then I forgot about it completely. And
Exactly.
so did the movie.
And so if you're ever interested on actually what something is, you can ask, but I'm not going to give context because I just don't want to like bore the fuck out of people who already are bored out of their mind trying to watch this movie.
Yeah,
with
we'll
no
just look
context.
at the movie mostly.
But when I say I think I hate this movie more than you both is because I know what they were trying to do, and kind of like what Alex said, there's so many gems here. There's so many times where I was like, oh, that's such a good scene, or that's great costume or costume work, or oh, that's a really great way to do that concept. Like having the context of the books definitely really helped in make me enjoy the movie more because I knew where to fill in the holes. But this movie suffers not from lack of context, but too much context. Too much exposition. I
think it's both. It feels like both to me.
Well, you can't do Dune in a film like Lynch or like this cast and this crew were trying to do in this movie. You can't capture this massive. I mean, for anyone who hasn't read Dune takes place all 7 books over tens of thousands of years. It's very Isaac Asimov inspired, where these stories take place over many, 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 many generations, where the deeds of the first book are legends of the last book. And they're trying to encapsulate that aesthetic in one, granted, 3-hour film, and really failing in making it
2 hours and 12.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I watched the extended edition.
Oh yeah, that's a thing to note. There are a couple versions of this. There's the theatrical one, which is just over 2 hours, and the 3-hour one, which doesn't add much that David Lynch even shot or wanted. He actually says worse. Apparently, I haven't seen it. It's mostly like landscape shots with like droning, like talking over it. Apparently, it was cut for television, so it makes it feel more episodic than the original film, and makes it more boring somehow.
Oh,
I can't speak to it though.
Wait to talk about the voiceovers in this movie.
I mean, I'm curious what the difference is though, but there's definitely a ton of voiceover in the theatrical cut. And I was wondering when I was watching it, I was like, did they plan to do this, or was the movie, like when they cut it down, was it so poorly explained what was happening that they had to ADR in all of these like thought bubbles into the characters? You know what I mean? Like, what do you guys think?
That's a good question. I feel like they probably had to do it afterwards. There was so many weird voiceovers that like...
You know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of... there's a cut of Blade Runner that nobody's seen because it's the worst cut, but it has Harrison Ford doing like voiceover in between scenes, like all of these thoughts, and it like ruins the movie.
Yeah.
And I thought of that.
I've never heard of this cut of Blade Runner. What?
It's like a film noir thing where Harrison Ford is like reading or narrating, and it's like...
Does he actually sound really, like interested?
No, it's like so low energy.
It ruins the movie. I can't emphasize this enough. It's worth watching if you like Blade Runner, just to see how to ruin a great movie.
I'm gonna say this about Dune. I do think it was riding on the high of Star Wars of the time and like all this crazy success, and that's at least one thing that drew me to it, and that's part of the reason that I love it still, is because like I know that the sci-fi story that is like bound up in it is very epic, and I know that it's something that I would like. So genre, like beauty and like the shots and cinematography and like the set design and things like that, I love all that stuff. And I also love David Lynch, but the story is just so chopped up and like uninteresting and flaccid that I also hate this movie so much.
I like that terminology there, flaccid. Yeah, it gave me nothing to care about. I was like, okay, it was so accelerated. It went through its plot so quickly, and yet somehow managed to completely lose my interest almost immediately. Well, that's not that's not completely true. I would say about halfway my interest was gone, but
yeah. I mean, I'm so happy we're talking about this because I had that feeling the entire time I was watching this movie. I thought, wow, this ADR feels totally post. It feels totally like done it after the edit and after they watched the movie and they were thinking, wow, this makes no fucking sense. The narrator who is doing the ADR is mispronouncing like all of the planet names. It's somebody they definitely like hired just off a list somewhere to come in.
Okay,
and, like,
so you're talking about the stuff Alex and I didn't hear now.
Oh wow, all of that? No.
So
it's all you guys
just
hear.
Character stuff.
All you guys hear is the character. Oh
yeah,
my
there's no
God.
narrator. There's no narrator in the
Holy
theatrical cut.
fucking shit. That's hilarious that I had to sit and listen through that fucking garbage. And there's none of that. I was sitting there, I was like, oh wow, this is throughout the whole movie? Like the original? I don't remember this guy. Holy shit. Yeah, so throughout the entire movie, there is a narrator who's never addressed. He's not in any of the other characters in the movie. And he just sums up what's going on constantly and like tries to keep the viewer in the context of the story. You can tell it's so desperate. They're trying so desperately to cling on to you and keep you into the narrative and keep you held on. And it's sad. And it makes me feel bad for the movie a lot of the time.
That part that you're talking about was just added for TV. And that's the reason like I didn't watch that cut, even though I had it, is that I read that it was so much worse and so pointless that I was like, all right, I'm just going to watch the theatrical one. And on the point about like, it be like, Alex, you're talking about sort of the post Star Wars coital bliss that people were approaching this from. Mm-hmm. Dude, if I were like really stoned in 1982, I probably would have loved this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just be like, wow, man.
Exactly. That's when the revolution of special effects and you could do things out in space was like really happening on the screen and at movie theaters. So like this would have drawn a pretty big like crowd of young and adolescent people into these theaters. I'm going to say this and it's going to sound almost like sacrilege. I feel weird saying it as such a big David Lynch fan. But again, we're not affixing all the blame to him. But
no, almost like very little of it actually.
Exactly. Which I think most people
we'll get into
do.
that.
It's pretty well known. But this movie is almost like if there was an analogous correlation, it would be what we watched when we watched the Dungeon Siege in the Name of the King movie to Lord of the Rings. Okay, you get this really weird, it feels like the production company did this and whoever distributed this company, right, the studio, they saw the cash cow that Star Wars was and they were like, oh, we can do the same thing and we're going to do the same thing. And you get this ridiculous movie because they hired someone like David Lynch who wanted to approach the story, I think, in a little more of an intellectual way, a little more abstract way. It turns this movie into just like a beast, like a Frankenstein of just poor decisions down the line.
I'm going to have to disagree with you a bit there because I just feel like I'm choking with disagreement.
Exactly. I agree with you, Alex. I'll get into that.
I disagree in the way that I don't really feel like... I feel like this movie was definitely trying to seize on the Star Wars popularity. 100%. I agree with that point. But I feel like this movie is just a miscalculation in content and source material choice. They could have chose... This movie would have been great. I feel a great kind of sci-fi, David Lynch, weird movie if it was any other story but Dune. Keep the effects. Really? Keep the actors. There's a lot of really great actors in this movie. I mean, there's so much to offer here. But
there are a lot of great actors in the Name of the King as well.
That's true. I mean, that's very true. Touche. But I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of love here initially, and there's a lot of caring and desire and want to make the movie this great sci-fi epic, and choosing Dune and trying to choose Frank Herbert's universe was just the miscalculation.
There's definitely like I agree with Alex and I agree with Jeff in certain different ways. There's definitely more craft and like love going on in terms of like the production and the spirit of it. I think like there's like David Lynch is a better director than Uwe Boll to do anything.
Of course.
Much less like a sci-fi or a fantasy epic. But I don't know. Like I feel like there's definitely the level of studio cynicism going on, which possibly ruined the movie. We don't know. We'll never know. We'll never see what the intended cut of this was. But it was approached cynically by the studio for sure, where they're like, Star Wars is popular. Let's hire somebody and make a quick thing and somehow ruin it. I mean, In the Name of the King though was ruined from the off. Like there was no chance that was ever going to be good. This movie, I will give it the credit that like if it was allowed to be what it was intended to be, it might have been good.
No,
I don't know.
I don't think so. I think even if David Lynch could get his full original cut released, I still think it would be considered a boring slog of an uninteresting movie.
I think you're probably right.
I just think the content's it was a miscalculation to choose this content. And there's all of it. I mean, if you think about this movie in a vacuum, all of it is so well done. Like I think the matte paintings are beautiful. The miniatures, at times they're a little silly, but for the most part, they're pretty good. They're actually pretty good, the miniatures. The sandworms, there's some little bit of claymation. It reminds me of like early like the Beetlejuice type of like claymation.
Exactly.
But
it's in that universe.
But when they're doing like the practical sandworm, like when the big sandworm comes out and grabs this spice miner, I was like, oh, okay, that's pretty cool. Like I was pretty stoked on that scene. That was a nice representation of what was actually happening in the book. So I was happy with that. But I don't know. It's every time there was an exposition dump, every time that they kept trying to give you context, it was so ham-fisted. It was so forced. Everything like, okay, here's everyone had to shove their motivation down the audience's throat immediately because their motivation is chapters and chapters and chapters long.
That's all their character is. There's no characters here. There's just motivations that are spelled out for the audience as a thing is happening with like no build up.
I know. I thought it was funny. You were like, "Who does that actor play?" And I was like, "Oh, Fade Routha." Like you were like, "Who's Sting playing?" I was like, "Oh, Fade Routha." And you're like, "Yeah, Bibbidi Bobbidi." Like that guy's name.
Nobody's names in this mean anything to me. None of the lore that they throw at me, just like vomited up onto the screen, means anything to me. They're like the blurbity blurks in the Gobadop dimension. I'm like, cool. What does that fucking mean? What are you talking about? I was like instantly lost.
You're literally like you have described like how Rick and Morty was invented.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
There is like a literal scene where it's just literally an exposition dump. And you just see the faces of certain characters like superimposed on the screen.
Oh, yeah.
And they're like, 7 years have passed by or some fucking crazy amount of time. And it's like Paul and whoever the fucking girl's name is are in love with each other. And like, it's just spinning heads in space talking to you. And you're like, this is really how you're going to show the passage of time? I would way rather prefer like a blank screen that's like 7 years later and then it shows like Paul with a fucking desert beard or some shit like that. Like I don't know, but
no, the film shows when it should tell and it tells when it should show. It just can't ever get either one right.
Even before they do that passage of time thing, that's like, and Shania, blah, 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 my love. And I'm like, wait, they're in love now? All of a sudden he's in love with the desert girl? Like, when did this happen? It's so accelerated. It's like 10 scenes were cut out of it.
Yeah. You're right. I mean, you're right. It's so hard from somebody's perspective who knows like the story because it's like, okay, I give movies a lot of liberty as it is. And so when I know the story that they're trying to tell, I just inherently I can't help but to like fill in the blanks myself and
Oh,
be
yeah.
like, oh, this is what they meant. Okay, I get
that makes total sense. You have the context, and that context always helps inform your vision of it because you can understand what was intended.
But
for
even
me, I was like, I have no idea what's going on with the gobbledygook exposition, and all of a sudden there's a contraption where a cat and a rat are strapped together in some hilarious schlock segment, and I'm like, what?
Yeah, no, I was about to say earlier, like, watching this movie, as someone who's read the books, I didn't even know what the fuck was going on half the time.
All right, that's good.
It seems like the movie kind of was like I go to like something like Spaceballs, and there's like a gig
You guys
or
are fucking
a
assholes.
a gag that
What?
yeah, what?
You guys are comparing Spaceballs and In the Name of the King to this movie. It makes me feel
this movie sucks.
No,
Fuck
it's like
you.
a gag. It's like a gag of it's Spaceballs where he's like, "Oh, well, it's all for merchandising, right?" And like, I think it's Mel Brooks' character, and it is explaining to him that, or it's I don't fucking know. Anyways, there's a gag about the merchandising, and this movie had like toy lines come out like with action figures, and they didn't sell.
Oh,
Funko Pop came out with action figures that I'm sure sell more than the original ones because of the renewed like cult interest in this film. There was like card games and board games that came out and video games.
Like, what would you buy a toy of in this? You want to buy like a Patrick Stewart doll with a mullet and like he's like holding a gun in one hand and inexplicably a dog in the other. Well, he's like commanding.
God,
Did you guys
dude.
notice that?
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, it's funny because we've been talking so much about the movie, like out of context. We haven't talked much about the plot or what there is, and I think we should spare people. I think we're going the proper route on that.
Doesn't matter. Yeah.
Yeah.
The scenes with Patrick Stewart made me laugh the hardest in this movie because, as a big Star Trek fan, a big Next Generation fan in particular, he just is so obviously the best actor by far in that group. And they even like try to emphasize it because Gurney Halleck doesn't have many lines in the movie. He doesn't appear that much.
Is that Stewart's character?
Yeah, he's Gurney Halleck. Yeah, he's like one of Paul's trainers. And he's kind of like a bard.
They gave him like nothing to do, it felt like.
Exactly, because Gurney doesn't have many lines. And they tried so hard to emulate the book. They wanted so hard to just make the book. And this is why Lord of the Rings is amazing, because they didn't try to do this. If they tried to do this, if Peter Jackson tried to take Lord of the Rings, the book, and do exactly what they did here and try to do every scene, every passage, every little chapter, it would look like this. It would look like a mess, and it would be edited weird, and it would be way longer than it should be, and you can't do that. And that's why it's such a failure here, because they like took someone like Patrick Stewart. Like Patrick Stewart should have been Leo Atreides. He should have been Paul's father. Like that would have been the best role for him. But instead they make him fucking Gurney Halleck, and they even try to utilize his skill. They have that little scene at the table when they're all together, and he stands up and he gives that like little like poetry recital for everyone, and it's like super weird and out of context if you don't even know who like the fuck his character is. So it just doesn't make sense. But like Patrick Stewart like leans into it, and he really like puts his effort, and you can see his acting chops just boom.
Does he recite? I don't remember this scene at all.
There's it's like right in the beginning of like right around the beginning of the movie, like they're all gathered around the table, and Thufir Hawat tries to like throw in his like resignation because of the assassination attempt on Paul, and he goes,
Was this in the theatrical cut, Alex?
I don't know, actually.
Okay, so
I'm not sure if it was. I don't remember this at all.
Okay, you don't remember. All right, so there's the scene where the little like flying syringe comes out and tries to kill Paul, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and then after that scene,
Tries to give him the vaccine.
That's amazing.
Nice. He's like, no.
He's like, no. Right,
My immune
if I
system.
Get it, I won't get the microchip. It won't hit me if I grab it from the back. It'll be slippery because it's full of alien lizard DNA.
Aliengism.
Yeah. So right after that scene, they have like a little like gathering, and it's like all of him and his generals, and Paul's there, and he's like dispatching them around, and Thufir Hawat's like, I must resign, sir, because he's like,
who's Thufir Hawat?
Thufir Hawat, he's the Mentat. He's the one with like he's the older gentleman with like the red lips and like the big like black coat. He's the master of assassins.
Is it the eyebrow guy?
Yeah, eyebrow guy.
Okay. I don't know. This scene could have been in the movie. Like, it's very possible that my brain.
That's why I've avoided talking about the movie at all, because I know you guys aren't going to remember anything that happened at all. And as someone who actually enjoys the story, I go, okay, that's an interesting way they did that. Oh, that's a cool way to do it. Oh, fuck using Sting as Fade Routha. That was fucking stupid. Fuck putting Sting in a movie at all.
Except in Lock, Stock.
Is Sting in Lock, Stock?
Yeah, he's the dad.
Oh my god, okay.
He's the bartender. Yeah.
He's the bartender dad in Lock, Stock.
Yeah.
That's 100% correct. Go ahead. Sorry, Alex. Oh my god.
You're good. There's a. I'll disagree and say that I think that there are a lot of strong performances in the movie, and I do think the casting is good. I do think Kyle MacLachlan was young, but obviously I think he's grown into his acting role now. But I feel like there are definitely some. I thought Jack Nance was great. I think that Max von Sydow was okay. I actually think Jürgen Prochnow was cool too. However, I think my least favorite thing about this movie is fucking Toto doing the soundtrack.
Oh my god.
I don't understand, because David Lynch is notorious for, in my opinion, having great original soundtracks.
Well, it might not have been him, which is a point to make. He had no say over Final Cut. They might have just, hired
That's
Toto
what I mean.
completely.
It's they just tried to tap into this young energy where they were like, okay, well, all the kids like this fucking Toto Africa band right now. We're going to have them come into the studio and fucking make the music for this giant sci-fi. It's just fucking stop. Please. This movie could have had cool music.
Well, dude, the new Dune is going to have Cardi B doing the soundtrack. So
what?
No,
it's not.
It's more of a James Bond thing.
Yeah, he would do that.
James Bond chooses the pop singers to make different songs.
You get Jack White and stuff to do for the intros of James Bond. There you go. That would make sense. They wouldn't do Cardi B, I don't think. But
Yeah. No, I mean,
what are we talking about? Talking about Dune?
Dune.
Talking about the music in Dune. It's just. I mean, maybe Sting could have fucking done the music. The Police could have done the music, and I would have probably liked it more. Toto's not even I don't know.
I love how it's such a frustrating thing. I know, because it's a good movie that is bad, and it's not fun to watch at all. Because
this is the Star Wars at home meme that is all over the internet.
Yeah, exactly. It's not fun to watch because it's not horrible. It's not interesting to watch because the story is just a fucking salami sandwich of fucking awful.
I had that thought. I was like, this movie isn't bad enough to be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it just suffers from all of the most uninteresting, boring elements of the story, and just
which is sad, because I agree with Alex. I think the performances are pretty good.
Me too.
And I think the production design is fun. And the miniatures is clearly a lot of effort and talent going into it. It's just sad that it's in service of just a terribly told story.
Yeah.
With
and
bad
it's sad
dialogue.
that David Lynch, he's such a creative mind when you let him do his thing, and it's such an unfortunate thing that a studio would even think to try to hold that back, knowing that that's really what makes his films and his work unique. It's his ability to explore his own kind of craziness, the scenes where he's sticking his hand in the box and the fire and the skin singeing. I mean, that was so classic Lynch style.
That was cool.
There's a little bit of Twin Peaksy vibes. I was waiting to see if Kyle MacLachlan would find who killed Laura Palmer, but oh god, yeah, I said it.
I know. I was that's about as much laugh as you're gonna get with that one.
Yep.
I'm Paul Atreides,
that was a
special
groaner.
agent, FBI.
Yeah. I had a point there and I got sidetracked by my own terrible joke. Jesse's mind strikes again.
Oh,
But
great.
it definitely suffers from like trying to stuff in too many of the big themes of, like, In the Name of the King, of too many like sci-fi or like otherworldly themes into the narration, where they're like, we're going to talk about the religion, or we're going to talk about the suits, which are cool, like the sci-fi aspect of the suits. But it's like I wanted to flesh out some of those themes. Not only does it suffer from trying to insert them too much, it inserts them so shallowly, like in such a shallow way that I'm like, well, fuck, why is that even in here? Why are we even fucking talking about this shit? What is going on?
Have you guys seen...
That's perfectly said. There are so many elements where you're like, this clearly has a lot of thought behind it, but we're given like 1% of it again and again and again. And on the topic, I remembered what I was going to say. Jesse striking again here. On the topic of David Lynch, it's interesting. Like, this is pretty early on in Lynch's career. He had done Eraserhead, of course, which was his first one, and was very influential in terms of people being like, what the fuck is this? It's very new style of cinema, and is still a weird masterpiece to this day. But then after that, he'd only done The Elephant Man, which is not super Lynchian in terms of how we think about him today, now that we have like the full realm of his filmography and the complete like gonzo weirdness he gets into. But he himself has said and maintains that doing this movie was kind of him selling out, and he recognizes now that he wasn't the right person to direct this, which is not to say he forgives the studio for completely ruining his movie, but he recognizes that he wasn't the one to make it at all and that he was selling out. So I'm not sure, like to Jeff's point earlier, like the 4-hour version probably, honestly, would have been just as fucking boring and probably more so, you know?
So it's funny because the early attempts to make this movie, we've reviewed a film from Alejandro Jodorowsky, and he was attached to direct, and he approached some bands to make the film soundtrack, including like Pink Floyd, and his cast, I have pulled up right here. He envisioned Salvador Dali as the Emperor, Orson Welles as Baron Harkonnen, Mick Jagger as Feyd-Rautha, Udo Kier, I have no idea who that is, as Peter DeVries, David Carradine as Leto, Brontis Jodorowsky, his son, as Paul Atreides, and Gloria Swanson, among others. And it was going to be around 10 to 14 hours long.
Yeah, well, that's Jodorowsky being Jodorowsky. There's actually a documentary about that called Jodorowsky's Dune that's interesting. What it lacks is like a producer kind of side of it to say why all of this would not be possible. You know what I mean? Like, I would love to see it as well, but I mean, I would have loved to see any version of Dune directed by Jodorowsky, but it wouldn't have been what he envisioned because he's crazy. You know, like there's no way you could actually do that.
Even
that would
Salvador
be a titan.
Dali.
Yeah, that would be a titan of a movie. Yeah, Salvador Dali and Orson Welles. I mean,
on set together, like
that movie would have been too artistic. Like you wouldn't be able to understand what the fuck I think would have been going on even more so.
I'm sure it would have been more interesting.
But it would have been more interesting to look at.
We love the Holy Mountain.
Have you guys seen stills of the new Dune?
Yeah.
I haven't even watched the trailer.
I have not either. I kind of try to stay away from trailers because they're a little too revealing nowadays. But
exactly,
I noticed some interesting things after watching this film again. The still suits look exactly the same.
Yep.
In the new film.
Yep.
And there was a lot of other like interesting similarities.
The sisterhood.
Yeah, I feel like this movie is also loved by Denis Villeneuve a little bit. Like,
yeah,
I don't know.
Definitely.
I feel like a little like there's some interesting pulls from this film that are in this kind of new modern take on Dune, and it's interesting. he keeps the still suits. He keeps the aesthetic a little bit, the kind of boxy outfits, and I don't know. I kind of feel a little bit of this movie in his version, and I'm interested to see if that's the case. If there's a little bit of love there.
There will be nods for sure. Whether they're like tongue in cheek, I don't think that's not his style. I feel like that would mess with the movie. I think they would be like serious and like actually genuine nods to the film. The scene where Paul puts his hand in the box and the leader of like that sisterhood, that secret society of women.
Benny Gesserit.
Yeah, that's the character's name.
No, that's the secret society.
Exactly, Alex.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, like I don't know what the fuck is going on in this movie. Anyways, her outfit is very similar too. Like the costume design is similar. So there are some cool. I mean, that thing that was in that tank, that like gives out the fortune that tells the future. That thing was fucking cool.
That's one thing I want to ask Jeff about, because I'm like, what the fuck was that? Because it never comes back. Or does it? Maybe I don't remember.
It does actually, when they're
damn it.
It's a navigator. So
I'm sorry for people who love this movie. There are people who love this movie.
If you love this movie, you
I get
love,
it.
Like, yeah, you love it's your favorite movie, but not. You acknowledge it's not the best movie. It's like my Romeo plus Juliet.
I'm never going to talk shit on people who like this movie, because I get it. Like, I get why it's attractive. I do. It's a cool shell of a story. It's not told well to me, but I think the production is super cool. Like I've said, I was really hyped on that until I just sort of gave up on the plot. But yeah, no, if you like this movie, great. Like, I'm not going to talk shit on that at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, there was a definitely good old college try here. But yeah, to answer your question, the baby in the tank is a navigator. So like spice it changes you depending on like how refined and how much you eat and how much you ingest. And so basically navigators are just I think they were once human. I'm pretty sure. And they've just ingested so much spice that they've sped their evolution mentally, but because of that their bodies aren't able to keep up, and so they just like kind of become these like shapeless baby looking things, but their brains are massive. And so what they're able to do is, so spice, oh god, here we go. Spice gives you something called prescience, which they don't talk about, or they try to talk about, but they talk about like in a shitty way. And prescience is the ability to like see into the future. So the way they travel in space is they see into the future. I'm like laughing so hard as I'm trying to explain this.
I'm like half listening.
I know they basically see into the future and predict the route that is the safest for the ship to go on, essentially.
Got
and
it.
the spice allows them to do
travel.
that. Yeah, it's basically how they warp. It's their version of warp speed.
I like how spice is just like used for everything. It's just
spice
like
is space magic powder. It's the epitome
powder.
of space
But it's
magic.
also like a drug, which is hilarious because it's like, oh, we use this for the biggest building blocks of society and industry. We need this spice, like it.
But you take it and it's like a DMT
spice
trip.
Must flow.
Exactly.
Spice is essential for space travel.
It's like, oh, you can live for a very long time if you take spice, but you are also a drug addict. And it's like, oh, okay.
Well,
it
really depends on how you take spice as well. It's like there's so much like
if you shoot it or if
yeah,
you
no,
it, or if you
shooting. It's the refinement process.
What if you boof it? Do they cover that in the books, Jeff?
No, they don't. I'm sorry, they don't go
God
like, what if
damn
I
it.
just take a bunch of spice and put it in my beehole?
Yeah.
No, it's just like depends on like the Fremen.
Go right to your bloodstream.
The Fremen are like, they're exposed to like the raw spice in the desert, and that's why it like gets in their bloodstream.
Is that the blue-eyed people?
Yes, the blue-eyed people. The blue-eyed people who like, I love the scenes where they just forgot to edit in the blue eyes to the actors. Oh my god, it made me so happy every time it happened, and it happened all the fucking time. It was so great. They would just like have a scene, like a long scene between two actors, and there just wouldn't be any blue eyes, and they're just like, oh, I just forgot. That's adorable. Like anything that was bad about this movie was very adorable to me. I didn't go like, oh, this. I had no like malice when I hate a movie, and I feel bad for our listeners who enjoy the malice when I hate a movie, but I just didn't. The parts I hated about this movie were more like, oh.
Well, you like the world. It'd probably be different if you didn't read the books. I would assume.
and I kind of, that's like a great transition, because I wanted to ask you both, like, because you've seen this movie now freshly as adults, and it makes no fucking sense to you, which I do not blame. It makes no fucking sense to me. Are you interested in the new Dune? Like, I mean, are you interested in how Denis going to try to do it? Because you guys aren't fans of this world.
Anything Denis Villeneuve does has been amazing. And he does so many different things, and they're always amazing. I think I've seen all of his movies, maybe not like one or two of the very first small ones or something.
Sure.
But I've loved all of them. And I love big sci-fi. We all love big sci-fi. So yeah, I mean, I'm stoked. I thought you were going to ask if we were interested to read the books now.
No.
That's what I thought you were going with that. But yeah, no, I'm stoked for new Dune for sure. Not because of this movie though. But actually, let me amend that, because I'm interested to see this story done well.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, that's likewise. I was going to say, I think that just where film technology is at allows for more fertile ground for stories like this. Like you said, Jeff, maybe like it was a bad choice to choose Dune back in 1984. Whereas, Star Wars is like a very traditional hero's journey setup kind of thing. It lends itself to being very profitable and accessible. They went a little too maybe like literary with this one in 1984, and they're like, oh well, let's do this, it looks long. It'd be like literally if a producer saw the book set on the shelf and was like, oh, we can make millions of dollars out of this.
They did plan a couple of sequels that never happened because this movie was a bomb, but it sounds like they're approaching the new one in a smarter way as well, because it's sort of half the story.
Half the what?
Half the story. So like,
yeah,
I don't know exactly where it leaves off, but I was reading some inaugural reviews, and they're like, it's really great, half of a movie. And I'm like, okay, that sounds kind of disappointing, but at the same time, after watching this, I'm like, that makes sense. You want to take your time with this story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, and that's. But I was actually going to be my second question was, do you guys think they're taking their time with this movie in a way to set up for multiple sequels if this movie does well?
Absolutely,
for sure.
The people that are,
because it just seems
movie,
out of his Denis like kind of wheelhouse to do like a kind of a big franchise movie.
Well, he did Blade Runner. He did the sequel to Blade Runner.
Well, that's just one movie,
right? Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah.
The people cast in this movie are very contemporarily, like very currently modern right now and hot. Like you have Timothée Chalamet, who's one of the bigger like leading actors right now in films.
Is he?
Like this.
I've never heard of him before.
Oh, he is for sure.
What was he? I'm thinking.
Let me look him up.
Did I see him in Spider-Man?
He was in.
Oh, he's
Little
in Call Me
Women.
by Your Name. Yeah,
Call Me by Your Name.
Yeah, Call Me.
He's in.
Yeah, Call Me by Your Name's great.
This movie called The King, which is interesting. It's about the Battle of Agincourt and everything, based off of Shakespeare's play, one of the Henrys. I don't want to think about which one right now.
He was in Interstellar, I guess.
He was in Interstellar.
That's the only thing I've seen him in. And I guess it was probably like a really small part.
He's Casey Affleck's younger self.
Yeah.
So then you also have Jason Momoa. You have Zendaya.
Yeah.
You have I can't think of anyone else right now.
Stellan Skarsgård, Josh Brolin.
There you go. You have a ton of people.
I love me some Josh Brolin. Do you think he'll deep throat a frozen banana?
Yeah, oh God.
I hope so.
That would
he's
be.
He's playing Patrick Stewart's character, Gurney.
We can only hope.
Oh, this frozen banana is melting really fast on Arrakis.
So yeah, it's really hot here.
I gotta slurp it up really quickly. Moto Panakeku. Moto Panakeku.
No, I'm just curious because it just seems interesting because he's such an artistic director, and for him to take on a franchise role, because I understand what you mean. Like, he has done sequels before, but if this goes well, if Dune goes well, this would be like his thing. Like,
yeah, it's like an eyebrow raiser.
If he does 3 great Dune movies in a row, which would be fucking...
Oh, yeah. He'll be set. He'll be in the Peter Jackson league. He'll never have to do anything again.
He'll be known as like, oh yeah, Denis Villeneuve, the guy who does the Dune guy.
Yeah.
And that was going to like set him for life. And that, I'm happy for that. But at the same time, it's like, I do hope that we don't lose a bit of that artistic hunger that he has to make the great movies that he does. Yeah. Because I agree with you. Like, he's one of my favorite like current directors right now. Like, everything he's made, I have totally enjoyed. I mean, Arrival is one of my favorite movies.
Arrival's fantastic, really smart. Arrival's like the kind of movie I never thought we'd get, where it's like really intelligent, huge budget sci-fi that's like isn't action schlock, you know? I never thought we'd get that again. It's about language and connection. You're like, what? How'd this even get made? Sicario's amazing. Enemy is one of my favorites. It's really abstract. Prisoners, yeah. He's a quality filmmaker. Blade Runner 2049.
He makes them bangers.
He makes good movie films. He's an accomplished shooter of scenes.
Yep, and it's yeah. I mean, I'm excited for it. I mean, to answer my own question, I'm very excited for it as a fan of the books.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we'll cover it. We went this far.
But
I know we went this far.
He didn't
to tiredly cover it.
He didn't do Sicario, Day of the Soldier, or whatever.
No, he didn't do the sequel.
That movie fucking sucks. I just want to say that on record right now. But
I never saw it.
Okay.
Yeah, I never saw. I saw Sicario, and I was like, I don't know. It just seemed like the movie that would get a shitty, like, straight to VHS sequel.
It's so bad. But yeah, so no, I'm excited to see the new one. I feel that I don't know. I'm still willing to give Dune 1984 a chance. I will still watch it as just a normal watcher and lover of movies. No, like if it's on TV or something, like I'll be like, oh, Dune's on. Like I'd watch it for like 15, 20 minutes.
Grandpa over here with his TV.
Yeah, exactly.
Again.
And then I'd switch back to Jeopardy after the commercial break is over. And yeah, I don't know. Like I'm willing to give this story another chance. I probably will end up reading the books at some point, but
oh, please do.
I don't know.
They're a joy. I mean, to not spoil the books, like, so I will. So anyone listening, big spoilers for the books of Dune, unless you guys don't want to hear this, because I don't want to spoil it if you plan on.
It's fine. If I read them, I will have forgotten what you're gonna say by then anyway.
In the idea of scope, I mean, Paul Atreides goes from this kid in the first book to becoming a sandworm god by the end of the last book.
Is he actually like a sandworm?
He's a sandworm.
Okay, I might remember that actually. That actually makes me more interested to hear about the reader.
Yeah, his character is long dead. Like the man who was Paul Atreides is long dead and forgotten. Muad'Dib, who he becomes his own legend, and then Paul ascends and becomes a fucking sandworm god.
Oh man, what if they did this story, but instead of having an actor, you just have like a CGI sandworm as Paul throughout, and it's just like grows and grows.
It's just like you get Benedict Cumberbatch to do it.
Yeah, it just like says
or David
lines.
Lynch.
It's just like, brr, brr, brr. Yeah, you have David Lynch voice it for the nice nod. That'd be great. It's like, let me tell you about the weather in LA today.
Do you want to learn the secrets of the universe? The spice must flow. You know that, right?
It'll be 82 degrees and hot.
One thing that I thought was actually kind of hilarious was the spaceships. The first spaceship that Paul goes into looks like the Great Glass Elevator from fucking Willy Wonka's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Like, it's interesting that it's different than Star Wars, and you could see that David Lynch tried to make it like where the Baron lives and everything. You're like, where? You're like, what the fuck is this room? You know? So it has like his twist to it that I like. But I think overall that this film is it's just a mess. I don't know. And it sucks because I feel like there's so much potential and like potential energy. And there are moments where it sparks really well and you're like, ooh, this was really fascinating or interesting. And I think in this new one coming up, he's given nods to that on purpose. And then I do think that it's probably set up for a sequel, but that's just more of a pessimistic view. I don't think that it's set up for a sequel because, oh my God, this artistic vision is just unstoppable. I think it's because studios are just like, people will fucking go and see these movies.
Probably a little of column A, little of column B.
Yeah.
I would think.
Yeah, I just hope they don't try to make it into like a primary action movie because Dune is supposed to be a slow burn.
Mm-hmm.
Dune is a story about like a person who understands from the jump who they're going to be thousands of years later and what their influence is going to be thousands of years later. And they need to understand that now. Like in the books, Paul sees visions of like great fleets of ships who are like that are like cleansing planets with nuclear fire. And he sees like the Atreides flag flying on these ships. And he's like, and the great jihad led by the Fremen. Like he sees this huge vision of like this totalitarian force that he becomes. And he like he's like trying to prevent that the whole book. He's really trying to like make the right decisions and like, think second guessing like, is this actually leading to that fate or am I acting on my own accord? Like it's a fantastic story. So it's like I'm excited, but I'm just hoping that they don't try to turn it into like, here comes the sandworm. You know,
there will be a little of that.
And I'm fine because there is a little of that in the book. There's actually quite a bit of it. But yeah, I don't want it to be we got to take out the sandworm queen.
Exactly.
Or shit like that,
in an extended action sequence.
Yeah. It's
filled with lasers.
Timothée Chalamet will be good for what you were just describing. He's a good enough actor that like he can go up and down with that type of thing. And I like how they kept this kind of like young, heart-throbby Hollywood actor as like the main character. Because like that's another nod to 1984's Dune. Kyle MacLachlan was a young actor at the time, and it was like, I don't know. If anything good came out of this, is that it spawned the partnership between the two, between MacLachlan and Lynch.
I had fun spotting a few Twin Peaks characters.
Everett McGill.
There's like the uncle character shows up.
Big Ed. Yeah. Everett McGill.
Yeah, Big Ed. There you go.
Yeah, this film is interesting. I'll say that. But.
Yeah, you know what it felt like if I didn't know it was based on something, and or even so, it felt like a big budget version of like a made-for-TV movie in 1982. It's like one of those really low budget like Italian fantasy movies or something like that. They made for like $200,000 or something.
Yeah.
Where it's just like a mess and things don't make sense.
I got some Barbarella vibes for sure at times.
Oh, so did I.
Yep,
definitely. I was like, this is like a better version of Barbarella though. Barbarella is fucking unwatchable.
Yeah.
But it was just like I just got some vibes from like the way that the sci-fi was presented in Barbarella. It was just, I don't know, had this very matter-of-fact presentation, and like the fucking body shields are the most laughable thing. Like they're one of the more cool aspects, and the body shields is Frank Herbert making a nod to Isaac Asimov's The Foundation, where he was like really the first person to like come up with that concept of like a belt that creates a shield around you. And he's kind of weak because essentially Dune is considered the spiritual successor to Foundation. They're put in like the same type of category. They both take place over thousands and thousands of years. If anyone hasn't ever read The Foundation, please do. It's amazing. So yeah, it has a lot of little nods to like early sci-fi and sci-fi greats, and I don't know, that also adds to like I think some of the love that I have for the movie, and just the love that I have for people like Philip K. Dick and Frank Herbert and Isaac Asimov.
Yeah, I wish I liked it. Like I've said a few times now, I liked the production design. It was fun. The costumes were fun.
Yeah.
In a sort of B-movie way. I liked some of the nonsense. Like, I don't know why there were dogs everywhere and people are carrying dogs, but they were. Maybe that's explained in the unreleased cut. I have no idea, but I thought that was funny.
There's no scene where it's like, and Gurney Halleck runs out with the Labradoodle in his fucking jacket. Like, some just dumb fucking shit that they added because America, we got to make it relatable because it's like such a foreign world. I mean, I love that the Sardaukar, which are supposed to be like the elite forces of the Emperor, are fucking just like dudes in hazmat suits. Like, it's just so good. Like, there's
maybe
so
they just
corny...
had like bring your pet to work day and everyone brought their dogs and they're like, oh, I'll just let him run around in the scene, whatever.
Yeah,
I don't know, it makes sense like for a king to have the dog, but like just to see Patrick Stewart, like, and he looks exactly like Jean-Luc Picard. I think they were still shooting Next Gen during the making of this movie, and yes, they absolutely were.
Oh yeah, that mullet
so
was
it's
just like taped onto the back of his head.
Yeah, it's like they just had like
something.
all like they didn't change him at all in the beginning of the movie. So it was just so hilarious just seeing him there, like running outside with this obviously prop looking gun, like worse than Star Trek prop looking gun, and like a whatever it was, like Labradoodle in his fucking jacket. It's just so. It just shows the direction of the movie was never really going up in a place that made any sense.
Yeah. It is David Lynch. Maybe he had some like obscure reason for wanting dogs. It's like the dogs symbolize something crazy that nobody will ever get but me. I don't know.
We'll never know. I just don't feel like David Lynch put any kind of like thought into this movie.
I think he started getting beaten back pretty hard from the get-go too.
Yeah, I just feel like this movie was made by a director who was very checked out.
And recut by a studio who was cynical.
Yeah.
So, you know, you're pretty fucking fucked from the off. That's the way you're going about it.
I will say though, like great rebound for David Lynch, you know, or like not even a rebound. It's not even really like a demerit or like it didn't do anything to deaden his career as a director. And if anything,
he thought it would.
But if anything, he was able to be like more appreciated for having the freedom and reign to make things like really weird.
It's actually his most commercially successful film.
That's disgusting.
Weird.
Well, because those other movies aren't made for our like mass audiences. They're made for fucking weirdos.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean,
real weirdos.
They're made for real weirdos. We have yet to delve. It's funny that this is the first David Lynch movie we're doing. You would have thought that like we would have gone for something else first, like Eraserhead or Inland Empire or something.
Blue Velvet is having its 30-year anniversary today.
Oh, we could have done that.
I think David Lynch is somebody who's deserving of like a director spotlight. You know.
Ooh, we could. Oh man, it'd be a long one. There's a lot to say about each of those movies.
Yeah.
Let's see. How many would we be talking about here? We wouldn't do Dune. We'd excise Twin Peaks. That's its own thing.
Yeah, we can't do.
It's infuriating looking at his director thing on IMDb because it's like a million tiny movies. Okay, Inland Empire, that's 1. Mulholland Drive 2. The Straight Story 3. Lost Highway 4. Wild at Heart 5. Blue Velvet. Elephant Man, Eraserhead. Yeah, it's totally doable. Totally doable.
Yep. It would be another mountain to climb for sure.
We could plan it. We could plan it for like the new year or something. Give us all time to like synthesize them all
with a Lynchian New Year.
Yeah,
that's what it feels
I'm cool
like.
with that. That sounds like a good idea.
That's what the last 2 years, 2020 and 2021, directed by David Lynch.
I know we're living in some kind of just weird, fucking gross nonsense simulation at this point.
I'm living in the box that Paul puts his hand into. That's where I've been.
Oh man, I like that.
My god, dude! Just like searing inferno.
Exactly. Just pain. I don't know if it's burning or freezing or piercing damage. Who knows?
Piercing damage. So it's great because so many of these actors in this movie went on to do video game voices, which is really great. Jürgen Prochnow has done a lot of video game voices. Everett McGill, who they don't have here, which I was really the one who played Leto, not Leto. What is Liat Kyne? Who's Liat Kyne?
You're asking the wrong people, my friend. I don't know who that was.
He's Arngeir from Skyrim. Anyone would recognize his voice immediately.
Okay. Wait, is he really?
Yeah, it's I gotta get my video game reference.
Is it Bellathor or Bellathor's voice?
No, it's he's like the old guy at the top of the mountain who tells you about the voice.
Oh,
he's the old.
He's the graybeard and High Hrothgar. Yeah. Nerds, we're nerds.
Yep, he's like the main. He's the main graybeard guy. So yeah, I don't know. That's Max von Sydow.
Sydow, yeah.
Yeah, Max von Sydow. Yeah, he. That's Arngeir from Skyrim.
Oh, I didn't know that. I like him.
Yeah, he's a great actor, and he's done a lot of voices in video games, like a lot. And so I was like, oh look, and I recognized him from his face right away. So I was like, Arngeir is about to tell us about
very distinctive features.
Yeah.
Well, that was Dune, folks.
That was Dune. Do we have anything else to say about Dune?
No, I think we covered it as much as Dune deserves.
Fun production, boring movie.
Yeah,
to me.
Pretty boring.
Read the books.
Read the books. Look forward to the new one. And next week, I went back and forth a bit, and there were a lot of choices, but I think we're doing it. We got to do it. We're fucking doing it. We're doing Dead Alive, baby.
Okay.
Really? That's your reaction?
Yeah, it's one of those movies that I just feel like it's I know what you're going to say already.
Well, it's like my favorite movie.
I know, so it's one of those movies. It's like when I finally choose Romeo plus Juliet. Like you're gonna have that same reaction where you're gonna be like, oh.
The thing is, there's a lot of like sort of B schlock, Reel Weirdos type of things that I want to do.
Sure.
And I'm always going to be comparing them to Dead Alive because it is the golden standard of like wonderful schlock. And so I feel like we need to get that done before I go into other things like Reanimator and From Beyond and The Toxic Avenger and all kinds of other things that pretty much owe themselves in large degree to Dead Alive, or if not, are certainly going to be compared to it. So
that's fair.
And it's going to be shit ton of fun to talk about. It's just
I agree.
It's one of the most fun movies ever.
Yeah, it's I just can't wait to hear you gush about it. Like that's just gonna be so cute to hear you finally like just go off about a movie.
Nerd out. Yeah, I would be nerding out for sure. I don't know what Alex's relationship to this movie is, but we'll find out next time. Thanks for listening.
Bye-bye.
Now our podcast is done, and we have to run. We know it is sad, but we had so much fun. Don't be bereft, Jesse, Alex, and Jeff. We'll be back real soon. The Reel Weirdos. We talk about movies for way too goddamn long. Bo 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 bo.